Hi, I'm Joyce with Johnson Plastics Plus. Today we're going to talk about how to set up a design for the Chuck Rotary in Beam Studio. Now that your Beambox 2 and your Flux Chuck Rotary are set up, let's talk about some options for engraving on different drinkware. So to start with, let's look at our 40-ounce tumblers. This tumbler was done with a full wrap. The seam actually is here at the handle and you can barely see it. It's our white over holographic 40-ounce. We also have a great example here of a straight-sided tumbler. So this is a nice, super simple one to engrave because it's going to be the same distance all the way around. Shows really nice and clearly here. We also offer the holographic in a 20 and a 30. This 20 and a 30 ounce. This is our black over holographic. One of my favorite pieces of drinkware is the pint glasses. These come in multiple colors. They can either be fully wrapped or you can do a logo. Perfect for out by the grill. Finally, this is an example of Sir Mark over stainless steel with our stemless wine glass. These are also another really good one. They fit great in your hand. You can, again, wrap the whole thing or just do the central logo. So in order to do this, you've got to set your artwork up correctly in Beam Studio. But there's some pre-steps before you even get to the software that you want to go ahead and do. Let's talk about setting up a tumbler, and I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks on some different tools to have on hand that'll make all of this a lot easier. So this 40-ounce tumbler has 2 screws here in the bottom. In order to remove those screws, you are going to want a Phillips head screwdriver. So let's pull one of those out. Flux provided you with a soft tape measure here. We're going to have that on hand. And also, I really like to have thin masking tape. This is a very narrow piece of tape. So if I am trying to line up a logo on both sides, and I'm not sure if I want to engrave it as one job, I might use this tape to mark the center of my tumbler so that way then I can engrave it in 2 pieces. So these are kind of some tools I always have in my engraving kit. Finally, Flux has also provided you with a level. You will want to have this on hand so when we set these up on the Chuck Rotary, we can ensure they're as level as possible to get a clean engraving. For the 40-ounce, if you're going to do a full wrap, you will have to remove this handle. If you are only going to engrave maybe a logo here or a logo here or 3/4 of the tumbler, you can go ahead and leave that handle on. I like to remove it. It just makes it so much less likely that I might accidentally strike the laser head if I go ahead and take it off. It is a very simple process to just remove those 2 screws. For the pint glass, you don't really have to do too much, but we will want to get the circumference. Now, on a tapered object, you can either take the circumference, and this is going to depend on how you're engraving it. You can either go ahead and take the circumference where you want to put your engraving at. So in this instance, if I put that engraving here in the center, my circumference is going to be about 9 1/4 inches. If I wanted to do a full wrap, I would want to take the circumference here at the top and at the bottom and utilize a tool in Beam Studio called Rotary Warp to show that my tumbler is wider at the top and narrower at the bottom. For an item like the stemless wine tumbler, I'm going to go ahead and decide where on this I want to go ahead and put my engraving. So if I put my engraving here, I do want to make sure that I'm not going either too far down the curve where I'm here close to the bottom, where it would be out of focus with the laser engraver. So I want to decide where to put that, and then I'm going to take that circumference there as well. So to take the circumference, I just take that tape measure and I go tight around it, and it gives me a general number. In this instance, it's 11 inches. I will take that number and put that in Beam Studio so that way my software knows exactly how wide my tumbler is and how fast to rotate the Chuck Rotary. So let's go ahead and install our 40-ounce tumbler on our Chuck Rotary now. I do like to have this angled up slightly. It makes it easier when I go to put on the 40-ounce. I also like to have a single one of the brackets facing upwards, and I'm going to line that up with the tabs that are on my cup here. I like to have my tumbler at roughly the same distance, and I'm going to just go ahead and set my jaws here so that they're just creating tension and holding my cup in place. And once they've got tension on the cup and I can take my hands away, I'm going to rotate it and make sure it's at the same distance on each one of these brass jaws. I don't want my cup kind of angled at all. So this is a great time to, before I tighten everything down, to make sure everything's at about the same place. Then I'm going to start snugging this down so that my cup can't move. Move just a little bit there. And everything looks about equal there. So now I'm going to go ahead and take my level, put it here on the center of my cup. I will loosen up my leveling bracket there on the back, get it so that the cup is level. I'm going to go ahead and just check my level as I rotate the cup to ensure it is level all the way around. If it's not, I'm going to go ahead and address it by loosening this bracket and kind of lifting it up slightly and tightening it back down. You do want to take your time when leveling the cup to ensure it is fully level. The other thing is, if you're going to do a full wrap design all the way across, when you go ahead and autofocus, you're going to want to autofocus actually down here on the curve, but you do want to make sure that you are not going to hit these tabs. This is important. You don't want to strike the tabs with your laser focus or with your laser cone. So that is where you're going to take your level at. Now, for my artwork today, I'm going to actually be putting a logo, and I'm going to try to put a logo here on this side and then also here on this side of my tumbler. And in order to do that, I will need to set my artwork up in Beam Studio and then run a running frame so that I can see exactly where my artwork is going to engrave at. But first, let's autofocus on my tumbler so that way then that portion of our setup is done. To do so, I'm going to go ahead and bring the laser head over with my autofocus probe already extended. Now, I'm already maybe a little bit close here, but the first thing I'm going to do is wake my laser up. And there is a red light that shines down from my laser head. And I can see it here. There is a center line right here on my chuck rotary. That is the center of the chuck rotary. And I want to just line up my laser dot on that center line before I go ahead and bring my laser over. This is also then the center of my chuck rotary. And I'm going to take my autofocus based here. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure my probe is fully extended. And then I'm going to hold the autofocus button down. This is going to raise my tumbler up till it just presses that probe. It's now going to lower it. This laser has a feature where this gap right now between the laser cone and the surface of my tumbler is 16 millimeters. This laser has a feature where you can actually change that gap between 4 millimeters and 16 millimeters by reconfiguring the lens that's inside of our laser. In order to work with the 40-ounce tumblers, you will want to be at the 16 millimeter distance. And we can go into the recalibration of the focal lens at the end of the video. Okay, so that red laser dot is going to be the center of our engraving design. So I do want to set it up on the tumbler wherever I think the center of my design is going to be. And I'm going to actually go ahead and rotate my tumbler so that I'm in line with one of these pieces of tape that I put on a little bit ago. And now I can see that this is about the center of wherever I want my first design to be. I'm going to go ahead and lift my autofocus so that way it is not in the way as my laser head moves to the left and right. And now it's time to get into the Beam Studio software and start setting up my design. Now that your Beambox 2 is set up with the chuck rotary and you've got your tumbler in place, go ahead and open Beam Studio. We're going to have to set up a few different items in here before we bring our artwork in. So the first thing I'm going to go to is my document settings. These are here under the Edit tab. You can also access them here. There's a quick link next to where your laser's name is at, just to the right-hand side. It also opens the document settings. This is where you can change your resolution from 250 dpi to 500 or back to 250. The higher your DPI is, the more laser pulses you're going to have, so the cleaner your engraving is going to be, but it is going to potentially double the time of your engraving. So to start with, we're going to leave it at 250 DPI. I do need to tell it what my start position is going to be. If I use origin, that is going to start my laser from the upper left-hand corner. In this instance, that is not what I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and change this to current position. Current position uses the red laser light that's coming off of your laser cone to set your position of your engraving. In this instance, I do want my engraving to start from the center. So you can change this to start from like the left corner, the right corner, but for engraving with the Chuck rotary, you will want to start in the center of your design. The next one we're going to turn on is down here under add-ons, and it is rotary. By turning that on, this will light up blue, and that will give us our access line here on our workspace. That is the blue line here that I'm dragging up and down. The next thing we need to turn on is our rotary settings themselves. So going back under Edit, you can go to Rotary Setup. This is going to also give you the option here to swap between the roller style rotary or the Chuck. We have the Chuck already selected, and this is where you're going to input either your object diameter or your object circumference. In this instance, we're going to be using the 40-ounce tumbler, which is 12.5 inches around. And by updating that to 12.5 inches, you can see the object diameter also updated to 3.978. You can also change your rotation scale between 0.5 and 2. This is going to give you a little bit more control of that step motor as your object rotates. I'm going to leave mine on 2. All right, and then all I have to do is hit save. If I wanted to mirror my artwork or extend my work area, this is where I could also turn those options on. So by saving that, my rotary now has those settings inputted. And at this point, I would bring my artwork in. I'm gonna go ahead and open up and bring an artwork file in. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in an SVG, and this is coming in as color. So this is a logo that I went ahead and created, a monogram. So to start with, I'm gonna go ahead and actually group these items together so that they're all here on one layer. They would be on that layer, so I can delete my extra layer here. So I have an individual layer here, and I'm gonna go ahead and decide to duplicate this by using copy and paste. So Control C and Control V here on my computer. So now I have 2 of them. So I do want to make sure these both line up correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight them both and come over to my settings here on the right-hand side. I'm going to click into the settings, and this is where I can actually change the size of my items. I can make sure they align. I do want to have my centers aligned, so I'm going to just go ahead and click that. And the other thing I want to do real quick is I want to check the size of one of my monograms. In this instance, this came in at 7 inches tall and 4.5 inches wide. 7 inches is actually a little tall for the top of my tumbler, so I do need to size this down. I'm going to go ahead and size it down to 3.5, and I'm going to do the same with my second one and size that down to 3.5. This has a locked aspect ratio, so they both size down at the same time. So now the width is 2.2 and the height is 3.5. I'm going to just again make sure they align. Now I can also show here in Beam Studio, you can see the distance here between my items here. So I know how big my tumbler is. The circumference of my tumbler is 12.5. So if I make a box for 12.5, I know that this is the kind of example of the circumference. So when you're setting up your artwork, whether you want it to be mirrored or you want your logos to be on either side, you do want to kind of have a general idea of the width and the height of the area you want to be working with. So if you're planning on mirroring artwork, you do want to make sure it is going to line up on the left side and the right side. In this instance though, I want to try and make sure I have equal distance between my artwork. So if I do my math right, it means I should have about 3.5 inches between these 2 items. So a quick way to kind of do that math here is just to create another box and put 3.6 in here. And I want to make sure that's the distance I have here between my 2 items. So I'm going to just move these so that they are at either end of my box. And then all I have to do is go ahead and delete these extra boxes out. They were just kind of there to give me a grid, and I'm going to go ahead and group my 2 monograms. Now, because my Chuck rotary is actually in the machine at a 90-degree angle to my workspace currently, I do need to go ahead and rotate this 90 degrees. And I'm just going to line this blue dot up here on the center line. So now I have my logo here on the top and the bottom, and this center line represents, this blue line represents the rotary axis. So it's what the cup is rotating around. So before I get too much further, I'm going to want to check and make sure my placement of my designs is correct. So in order to do that, I'm going to come up to this icon called Running Frame. It's to the right of your document settings. When I click Running Frame, you're actually going to get 3 options. The first one is Framing. Framing just has a preview of the object's bounding box. So it is the box that is around, in this case, both of my monograms. If I do Hull, this is going to act more like a rubber band. It's going to more closely follow my engraving so that I can see if I have fine details that I want to work out the location for. Area Check is going to be similar to Framing, but it's going to go out beyond the bounding box because it is checking to ensure that the laser head can accelerate properly without striking something. I typically only use Area Check if I'm working with a curved object such as a bowl. So to start with, we're going to run Framing. All I have to do here is hit Start and then go over to my laser and watch the red laser dot move and see if my placement of my design is correct. So I can see that my design is not placed where I want it to be. So in order to get it closer, I'm going to go ahead and rotate my tumbler. And then I'm going to start by running Framing again so that I can see if I've gotten closer to where I'd like to be. So that's a little bit closer, but I do want to move it up just a little bit. So I'm going to move my laser head up just a bit, and I can run this again. The great thing about this is you can run it as many times as you like to get really accurate placements so that you're not wasting blanks guessing where something's going to be. So now that I have my bounding box going about where I want it to be, I'm going to run Hull so that I have a better idea of where my engraving is actually going to go at. So now that my engravings are placed where I want them, I can cancel out of this, and I just need to set my settings down here for my power and speed. So my power in this instance, I'm going to run at 70%, and my speed is going to be at 7 inches per second. And then all I have to do from this point is close my lid and tell the laser that I want to start working. All right, now that we're done with our engraving, I can go ahead and move my laser head so that I can access my tumbler and take it so that I can go ahead and clean it. Before I take it off here, I do want to show you that we have an engraving here centered on my piece of tape on this side and an engraving here centered on my piece of tape on this side. All I have to do in order to remove this is support the end of the tumbler. I'm going to go ahead and loosen my chucks here, remove the tumbler, and take it for cleaning. All right, now that we've gone ahead and cleaned our tumbler and I reattached the handle, in order to clean it, I used a product that we like, which is LA Awesome. This is available at a lot of retailers, and I like to use either Magic Eraser or melamine sponges. It helps kind of clean out all those grooves. Another option would be something like Dawn Power Wash and a good scrub brush. Anything to help get that carbon off. So now that I'm done with the chuck rotary, I do want to go ahead and change my lens configuration so we can use the laser with acrylic. Now that I'm done utilizing my chuck rotary, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to remove the rotary from the laser, and I'm also going to reconfigure my lens so that I can work with some acrylic. So to start with, let's go ahead and remove this. In order to do that, I do want to power the laser off, wait for the laser to fully shut off, and then all I have to do is reach back here, and I'm going to just disengage my cord and lift my chuck rotary out and set that to the side. The great thing is I can actually leave these 2 brackets and the pocket totally in place. I don't have to change anything else. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to go ahead and put my honeycomb back in. set my honeycomb back in and just make sure that's level. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and change my lens configuration. So we are currently at the 16mm focal distance that I'm using for rotary. I use that distance because it enables me to move around the tabs or on an odd-shaped item easier. So in order to change this, all I have to do is loosen this black nut that is here. I'm going to just loosen it carefully. Supporting that laser cone so it doesn't drop. Now, if you'll notice inside, there is going to be a silver spacer block. I'm going to go ahead and tip that out carefully. It is red on one side, silver on the other. The red side should always be facing the bed, so red to the bed. I'm going to put that up here. Now, my lens is sitting down here inside the laser. Inside the laser cone. I'm going to go ahead and tip that out and just also place that up there. So now there's nothing in my laser cone. So to change to the 4mm spacing, I need to put the spacer in first, and then I'm going to put my lens in. Now the lens has a flat side and a rounded side. An easy way to tell is if it's in the right direction is you tip it towards yourself, you should be able to see your face. If it is in the wrong direction, everything will be kind of a weird blob and there'll be no defining features. So since I can see my face, it's set up correctly. And then I just screw it carefully back into place. And I do want to make sure it gets nice and tight. So I want to make sure it's nice and snug here. And now the last thing I have to do is I have to tell the software here on the laser itself that I have changed my lens configuration. I just have to go to Machine and then my hardware settings. I'm going to go to the second page. The very first one is focus mode. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Right now, since we were using the rotary, we were set for distance focus, which is 16mm. And now I'm going to go ahead and set it for close focus, or the default setting. And then all I have to do is hit save. Because we have multiple people using our lasers in our shop, we went ahead and put these magnets on here. So I'm going to go ahead and change mine from saying 16mm focal distance to 4mm focal distance. So the next person using the laser will know what the distance is. They can also go under Machine, to hardware settings, to the second page, to focus mode to see what the current focus mode is set on the laser. There's also a great drawing here that shows you how the block and lens should be set up inside of the laser cone. Thanks for watching. I am Joyce with Johnson Plastics Plus. If you have any follow-up questions about the Flux Chuck Rotary or the Beambox 2, feel free to reach out to our customer service department.